Modern parallels. Rome is the blueprint for America's decline, the republic that voted itself away. The Roman Republic did not die on the battlefield. It signed its own death warrant in the Senate, in the assemblies, in the cheers of its citizens. No foreign army toppled it. The Republic collapsed because the people chose order over freedom and applauded as liberty slipped away. If freedom disappears to the sound of applause, would you notice? Empires rarely collapse in a single blow. They do not crumble overnight, nor vanish with the clash of armies. More often, they erode slowly, silently, until the very people who once swore to defend liberty no longer remember what liberty feels like. Rome is the clearest example, and in its story lies a warning for every republic that came after. Decay wears the mask of normalcy until one day, it doesn't. The Republic was born in 509 BCE, forged in fire and betrayal. Romans expelled their kings, swore an oath that no man would ever again rule alone, and built a system that would become the envy of the world. Power was divided, consuls to lead, the Senate to advise, the assemblies to represent the people. Every law, every ritual, every check was designed with one goal: preventing tyranny. For centuries it worked. Rome expanded across Italy, then across the seas. Victory brought wealth, power, and prestige. Roman citizens believed they had found a formula that could not fail. Freedom guarded by law, prosperity protected by strength. It was a republic destined, they thought, to last forever. Every unbreakable formula hides a fracture line, but victory carries its own poison. Each conquest brought back treasure, enslaved treasure that enriched the elite, slaves that displaced free farmers. Inequality widened. The Senate, once a council of elders, became an oligarchy of the wealthy. Citizens poured into the city, hungry, restless, demanding relief, and ambitious men saw opportunity. In 133 BCE, Tiberius Gracchus, elected as tribune of the people, bypassed the Senate and pushed land reform directly to the assembly. His promise was simple: take the vast estates of the rich and divide them among the poor. To his supporters, he was a champion. To the Senate, he was a threat to their order. When they struck him down in a riot, Rome witnessed something it had never seen before: political violence inside the heart of the Republic. Once violence entered the Senate, the Republic's soul cracked open. The line had been crossed. From that moment, the Republic's rules were no longer sacred. They were negotiable. What followed was a century of crises. Gaius Gracchus expanded his brother's reforms and met the same fate. Generals like Marius built personal armies, loyal not to Rome, but to their commander. Sulla marched those armies into the city itself, turning Rome's streets into battlefields. Civil war became a recurring feature of politics. Yet in each moment, the people chose survival over principle. They accepted temporary powers granted to generals. They cheered leaders who promised stability, even if that stability came at the cost of the Republic itself. The word temporary has ended more republics than swords ever did. When Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon in 49 BCE, many Romans did not see him as a traitor. They saw him as a savior from a Senate they no longer trusted. The famous phrase, "Alea iacta est," the die is cast, was not just Caesar's gamble. It was the people's too. The Senate still met. The assembly still gathered. Decrees still carried the proud initials SPQR, Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and the people of Rome. On the surface, res sursum, democracy remained intact, but underneath, the Republic was gone. What endured was only the ritual, a hollow performance masking the rise of empire. Rituals can outlive the freedoms they once protected. And here lies the most unsettling truth. The Republic was not destroyed. It voted itself away. Citizens surrendered their voice in exchange for bread, security, and the promise of order. By the time Augustus rose to power, calling himself not king, but princeps first citizen, they accepted him gladly. Rome still called itself a republic, even as it bowed to an emperor. For America, the echoes are chilling. A republic founded in rebellion against monarchy, constructed with checks and balances inspired by Rome's example, now faces the same temptations. Emergency powers stretched in the name of safety, laws bent in times of fear, citizens willing to trade liberty for promises of security, believing the system too strong to break. Are we living in a republic or in the illusion that it cannot fail? But Rome shows us the blueprint. No republic is too strong. No system is immune. Freedom is not usually stolen by force. It is given away, cheered, applauded, and justified until the people no longer notice it is gone. This is how the Roman Republic died. Not with the thunder of foreign armies, but with the quiet murmur of consent. And so the question lingers. When you look at your own republic, do you see its strength or its erosion? Stay with this story, the answer sharpens in the next chapter. Bread, circuses, and the American screen. Rome discovered something more enduring than conquest, more powerful than law. A simple formula: feed the people, entertain them, and they will not notice the chains being fastened around their wrists. The easiest chains to wear are the ones disguised as gifts. By the 1st century CE, this was not merely a tactic, it was the very engine of governance. Grain was distributed regularly to citizens in Rome, a public dole that kept bellies full and tempers cool. Theaters and amphitheaters became temples, not of gods, but of distraction. The Colosseum itself, towering and immortal, was less a monument to engineering than to psychology, for in its shadow, citizens ceased to be citizens. They became spectators. When a people become spectators, their republic is already fading. The state understood. Hunger breeds rebellion, but full stomachs breed complacency, so they subsidize grain. Fear breeds protest, but spectacle breeds silence, so they stage games. Thus was born the immortal phrase, panem et circenses, bread and circuses. When the Colosseum opened in 80 CE, Emperor Titus inaugurated it with 100 consecutive days of spectacles. Gladiators fought exotic beasts from Africa and Asia were paraded, then slaughtered. Rome staged mock sea battles, naumachii. Some sources claim early water spectacles in or near the Colosseum, though historians debate whether the amphitheater itself was ever fully flooded. Tens of thousands filled the seats each day, their cries of awe drowning out the whispers of political decay. The louder the cheers, the fainter the sound of liberty. And here lies the darker truth. The people did not resist. They demanded it. They measured a ruler not by virtue or law, but by the scale of his generosity and the spectacle of his games. Rome's emperors bought loyalty not with justice, but with distraction. By the 2nd century CE, well over 100 days each year were given to shows, festivals, and holidays, rising to roughly 170 to 180 days by late antiquity. Leisure crowded out civic duty. Rome was entertained into submission. A nation drunk on spectacle forgets the taste of responsibility. Now, glance across the centuries to America. The architecture is different, but the logic identical. The arena has changed form, multiplied, and digitized. Bread comes as subsidies, stimulus checks, consumer credit, and an endless promise that comfort is the highest good. Circuses arrive not in stone amphitheaters, but in glowing screens, televisions, smartphones, streaming platforms. Sports fill stadiums with tens of thousands and capture millions more through broadcast. Music idols and film stars command devotion once reserved for gods. News cycles transform into spectacle, blending outrage with amusement until politics itself becomes another form of entertainment. The average citizen, bombarded with distraction, has little time or appetite for reflection on liberty, debt, or decay. Rome gave its citizens gladiators. America gives them celebrities and influencers. Rome offered lions in the arena. America offers scandals on the screen. The form is new, the purpose is ancient. And this is the unsettling genius of the system. Distraction is cheaper than repression. Why silence dissent when you can drown it in pleasure? Why fear rebellion when you can addict the people to entertainment so abundant they no longer seek truth? Some philosophers argue that the true weapon of empire is not the sword, but the spectacle. Not chains of iron, but chains of distraction. Rome proved it. America perfects it. The most dangerous tyranny is the one that feels entertaining. Consider the numbers: hours spent binge-watching shows, scrolling feeds, debating trivial headlines. Entire days vanish in distraction. Citizens become spectators in their own republic, mistaking amusement for freedom. But the more consumed by spectacle, the less vigilant they are of power slipping away. Rome's people once roared for more games, more grain, more holidays. Today's public roars for sequels, playoffs, viral trends. The rhythm is unchanged. Entertainment replaces engagement. Pleasure masks decline. And so the question sharpens. When a people cease to think of themselves as participants in a republic, when they become instead an audience, can the republic survive? Rome answered with silence, drowned by cheers. What answer will we give? The games grew larger, the spectacles louder, the distractions more dazzling, and as the cheers filled the Colosseum, the republic's silence was sealed. Roads, surveillance, and the architecture of control. Empires survive not by chance, but by design. Rome understood that conquest without connection is temporary. A province won today may rebel tomorrow unless it is bound, stitched, and watched. Rome's true genius lay not only in its legions, but in the systems it left behind. Power endures when it is built into the very roads people walk. From the Alps to the deserts of Syria, from the forests of Gaul to the sands of North Africa, Rome built an empire not just of land, but of stone and order. Roads, aqueducts, fortresses, walls, and milestones transformed chaos into control. They turned scattered territories into a single body, with Rome as the beating heart. By the 2nd century CE, Rome had constructed over 250. This network was so advanced that modern highways in Europe still trace their paths. These roads allowed armies to march with terrifying speed, allowed merchants to trade across continents, and allowed Rome to tax, supply, and control like no power before it. The saying was true, all roads lead to Rome because Rome built them to. Every mile of stone was also a mile of submission. But roads were not neutral, they were weapons of empire. With every mile, Rome extended its reach, its visibility, its grasp. Every paved stone whispered the same message. You are inside Rome's world now. And roads were only the beginning. Milestones stood along the highways, etched with the names of emperors. These markers were more than directions, they were propaganda, a constant reminder that each step you took was under imperial gaze. Infrastructure itself became surveillance. To travel in Rome was to walk beneath the emperor's eyes. Even water carried control. Rome's aqueducts, arching triumphantly into the capital, were not simply feats of engineering. They were instruments of dependence. To live in Rome was to rely on water delivered by the state. The empire could nourish you or cut you off. Power was built not only with legions, but with pipes. Now shift the lens forward 2,000 years. America's empire does not bind itself with stone, but with interstates, fiber optic, and satellites. Its highways stretch across continents. Its airlines weave across oceans. Its digital networks pulse with billions of voices and images. If Rome's milestones carved imperial authority in rock, today's glowing screens carry authority in pixels. Messages of persuasion, distraction, and surveillance travel at the speed of light. The milestones of empire are no longer carved in stone, but in data. The principle is the same. Connection equals control. Rome's census system counted citizen households, especially adult males, and their property for taxes and military service. Provincial registers could extend further. It was the backbone of taxation and conscription. America has its censuses too, but now they are accompanied by databases that reach into every corner of life. Purchases, movements, communications all mapped, all stored. Rome counted its subjects on tablets of wax. America counts them with servers that never forget. Some historians describe Rome as a proto-surveillance state, not with cameras, but with governors, tax registers, informants, and forts planted like watchtowers across the provinces. It was a net loose at first, then tighter, until no citizen could move unseen. Rome watched with men. America watches with machines. Both watch without blinking. Sound familiar? Today's surveillance wears no armor. It wears algorithms. Rome's milestones told you where you stood in the empire. America's GPS satellites know where you stand every second. Rome's aqueducts carried water into the city, sustaining millions. America's data streams carry information, sustaining an economy of attention. Both systems offer life, but also visibility. To depend on the system is to be known by it. And this is the unsettling truth. Empires do not rely only on force. They rely on architecture, on systems so vast, so indispensable, that no one imagines life without them. Citizens may resent their rulers, but they cannot escape their roads, their network, their grids. The system itself becomes the empire. Rome proved it. 2,000 years later, the ruins of its Senate may crumble, its emperors may be forgotten, but its roads endure. Farmers still walk them, cars still drive them. The stones remain because systems outlive regimes. The same will be true today. Governments rise and fall, leaders come and go. But highways, satellites, networks, these are permanent. They are the bones of empire, and they rarely die. They evolve. When the system itself is the empire, rebellion means rejecting the world you live in. Which raises the most haunting question of all. When the system is everywhere, when the network connects every breath and every thought, are we living in a republic or in a Rome reborn? Built not of stone, but of code? Stay, because the next chapter reveals the price every empire must pay. Debt, legions, and the price of expansion. Empires do not collapse the moment they stop expanding. They collapse when the cost of expansion outweighs its reward. Rome, the greatest conqueror of antiquity, discovered this too late. For centuries, its legions had marched outward, carrying eagles on their standards and victory in their wake. But what begins as glory always ends as burden. The farther Rome reached, the heavier it became. Every empire grows until its own weight becomes the enemy. At first, conquest was profitable. Victorious generals returned with mountains of treasure, shiploads of slaves, whole kingdoms reduced to tributaries. The spoils funded temples, baths, and triumphal arches. Citizens cheered because every new war promised more wealth, more land, more opportunity. Expansion was the lifeblood of the Republic and later the Empire. But lifeblood can also become poison. As Rome pushed outward, it created borders too vast to defend. Germanic forests, Parthian deserts, African frontiers all demanded soldiers, forts, and constant vigilance. Conquest gave way to defense, and defense brought a permanent bill. Glory is cheap, security is expensive. By the 3rd century, the army likely consumed the largest share of imperial spending, often estimated at over half, with hundreds of thousands of soldiers stationed in distant provinces, guarding walls, patrolling seas, and fighting endless skirmishes. Rome had become a military state, and the legions, once tools of the Republic, became its masters. How were these legions paid? At first in silver, later in debased coinage copper mixed into denarii, value eroded by desperation. Inflation soared. What yesterday could buy a loaf of bread soon bought only crumbs. Trust in money, the foundation of any society, dissolved. When money rots, trust rots with it. Across the Republic and Empire, rulers used land and cash to secure veteran loyalty solutions that over time strained finances and dispossessed smallholders. Rome bought loyalty by selling itself off, piece by piece. The cycle was vicious. Soldiers expected more pay, more privileges. Generals, desperate for power, promised it. Emperors, desperate to survive, delivered it. Every throne in Rome became hostage to the legions. More than one emperor was made or unmade by soldiers whose loyalty was measured only in coin. When armies decide rulers, the Republic is already gone. Now look across the centuries to America. The resemblance is striking. A republic that once prided itself on restraint now sustains a military presence in over 70 countries, with hundreds of bases scattered across the globe. and roughly half of U.S. discretionary spending devoted to defense. Wars in distant lands bleed trillions from the treasury. At first, these wars promised security, influence, control of trade, but like Rome, the profit turned to obligation. Bases remained not because they enriched the nation, but because retreat was unthinkable. The cost of empire became permanent. And how is it paid for? Debt. Trillions borrowed against the future, trillions more promised in obligations that can never be balanced. Like Rome's debased coins, America's currency stretches thinner each year. Inflation rises, yet the legions must still be paid. The cycle is as old as empire itself. Armies feed debt, debt feeds empire, empire feeds armies until the weight becomes unbearable. Rome's arithmetic failed. Will America's be any different? Some say Rome fell to barbarians, but many historians insist Rome fell to arithmetic. The empire's equation no longer worked. Gains shrank, costs grew. What once enriched Rome now impoverished it. A machine designed for expansion had no logic for sustainability. Citizens in late Rome asked why their sons were dying in distant wars, why their taxes disappeared into endless campaigns. Citizens in America ask why trillions vanish overseas while bridges crumble at home. In both cases, the answer is the same. Empire is expensive, and its appetite never stops. The true barbarian may not be at the gates, it may be the balance sheet. Rome's emperors faced a cruel paradox. To keep the empire safe, they needed the legions. To keep the legions loyal, they needed money. To find money, they debased currency and stripped provinces bare. Each solution created a deeper wound. The more they fought to preserve power, the faster it slipped away. And in this, the American parallel is chilling. Military spending becomes untouchable, even sacred. Presidents may change, parties may shift, but the legions remain. The more fragile the republic becomes, the more it clings to its armies, just as Rome did. The story of Rome is the story of every empire that grows beyond its means. Armies that once defended liberty become instruments of obligation. Wars that once brought wealth become drains of debt. Soldiers once hailed as heroes become creditors to the state. This is why Rome's collapse feels less like an ancient tragedy and more like a mirror. For every empire must choose, expansion or exhaustion. Rome chose expansion until exhaustion chose Rome. Stay because in the next chapter, illusion itself becomes the final weapon of empire. And the echo across time is unmistakable. What empire are we living in today? Rome never admitted it had lost the republic. That was the final brilliant deception. The greatest illusion is not magic, it is continuity. The Senate still met, assemblies still gathered, laws were still proclaimed in the name of SPQR, the Senate and the people of Rome. Citizens still cast votes, still cheered their leaders, still spoke the word liberty as if it were real. But beneath the surface, power had shifted forever. The republic lived only in ritual. Its body was gone. Only its mask remained. The genius of Augustus lay in this mask. After decades of civil war, he knew Romans no longer trusted the Senate, no longer trusted each other. They wanted peace, stability, and prosperity, whatever the cost. So Augustus gave them what they craved. He promised to restore the republic while carefully dismantling it. He took control of the treasury, the army, the provinces, but handed back just enough power to preserve the illusion of balance. He called himself princeps, first citizen, not king. He rejected a crown, but kept absolute authority. Power wrapped in humility is still power absolute. In 27 BCE, the Senate staged a ceremony where it returned powers to Augustus. He, with calculated humility, returned some of them back while retaining the crucial ones. It was theater, a performance to reassure the public. In truth, Augustus held dominion over life and death, war and peace, wealth and poverty. Rome had entered the age of emperors, yet still called itself a republic. And the people cheered. They welcomed the illusion. Civil war was over. The streets were safe. the bread kept flowing. What mattered was not that the republic was dead, but that the memory of it remained. Symbols replaced substance, and that was enough. A republic can survive as long as its people prefer symbols to substance. Even centuries later, when emperors ruled as despots, the Senate continued to exist. Senators still debated, still issued decrees, though always in line with the emperor's will. Official documents still bore the proud initials SPQR. No emperor dared erase the phrase, because the illusion was more powerful than the truth. Rome proved that rituals of democracy can survive long after democracy itself is gone. Now look to America. A republic born in defiance of monarchy, structured with checks and balances precisely to avoid Rome's fate, now faces a hauntingly familiar pattern. Elections still take place, Congress still debates, laws are still passed in the name of the people. The rituals remain, but behind them, power concentrates. Lobbyists, corporations, entrenched elites, and executive agencies shape decisions more than the public voice ever could. The people sense the erosion, but the forms blind them. As long as ballots are cast, they believe democracy survives. As long as debates are televised, they believe representation endures. As long as the Constitution is invoked, they believe its spirit still lives. Yet forms are not substance and rituals are not reality. Rome learned this lesson. America risks repeating it. When ritual replaces reality, democracy becomes theater. The parallels are stark. Rome's Senate surrendered its power to emperors while pretending to advise. America's Congress yields authority to presidents while insisting it still governs. Rome's citizens voted for offices that no longer mattered. America's citizens vote while money and influence tilt the scales. Rome kept the word republic long after the republic was gone. America, too, may keep the word democracy long after its meaning has slipped away. The danger is not that freedom will vanish in a single night. It is that freedom will fade so slowly, so subtly, that no one notices until it is memory. Just as Romans awoke one morning to find themselves subjects rather than citizens, so too may modern republics awaken to discover the rituals endure, but the reality is gone. Freedom rarely dies in darkness. It dies in daylight to the sound of routine. And here lies the most chilling truth. Rome's people did not fight to keep their republic. They surrendered it willingly. They accepted the illusion because it was easier, safer, more comfortable than the burden of vigilance. Liberty requires effort. Illusion requires only applause. Rome chose applause. The illusion of democracy is perhaps the most dangerous form of tyranny because it convinces the people they are free even when they are not. No chains are visible, no crowns worn, no kings enthroned. Only rituals, elections, debates, ceremonies that reassure, while true power flows elsewhere. Rome shows us how long such illusions can endure. Centuries passed with emperors on the throne, yet still the initials SPQR appeared on coins, monuments, and decrees. The republic existed in name, not in fact. The shadow lived on long after the body died. So the question presses forward. When you look at your own republic, do you see its strength or its illusion? Do you see democracy or its shadow? Rome whispers its answer. It whispers through the ruins of the Senate, through the broken stones of the Forum, through the proud initials carved on monuments that once deceived a people into thinking they were free. The republic did not fall, it transformed into empire, into illusion, into a shadow that stretched across centuries. And perhaps that shadow has never truly left us. Rome did not vanish, it evolved. In its roads, still walked upon today, in its rituals, echoed in parliaments and senates across the world. In its laws, whose principles still shape our courts. And in the very way we imagine power through symbols, through pageantry, through the careful balance between illusion and control. Empires do not die, they change costume. Every republic since has lived in its shadow. Every empire since has borrowed its blueprint. From architecture to armies, From taxation to propaganda, the fingerprints of Rome remain on the pulse of modern civilization. If you want to see Rome, look not at ruins, but at yourself. And perhaps that is the most unsettling truth of all. The Roman Empire is not buried. It did not fall into dust and silence. It breathes through us. It governs us. It shapes the world we take for granted. When you walk a highway, you echo the footsteps of Roman soldiers. When you cast a vote, you enter civic rituals that echo Roman precedents, even if our franchise and institutions are very different. When you hear debates about liberty, surveillance, wealth, or war, you are hearing Rome's arguments retold in another tongue. Some say history moves forward, but Rome suggests otherwise. History circles back. Patterns repeat. Republics erode. Empires rise. Illusions endure. So ask yourself, are we living in the light of democracy or in the shadow of Rome? If the question unsettles you, stay unsettled. Vigilance begins with unease. And if the answer unsettles you, then good. That unease is the beginning of vigilance. Rome teaches us that empires do not end in one moment, they fade, disguised as continuity. The question is not simply what Rome was, but what Rome still is. Because maybe Rome never ended. Maybe it only changed costume. If you've stayed with this journey to the end, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you believe our world today is repeating Rome's path? Or do you see a chance to break the cycle? Share your voice in the comments, I'll be reading them. If this story sparks something in you, remember to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe for the next chapters in this series. The entire history of the Roman Empire, told as a mirror to our own time. History isn't over, it's repeating. And together, we will keep watching,